come and speak to us. Herman Cain is a symbol of what America stands for. He is the symbol of the new America, but he's also a symbol of the old America. He's been able to draw those two things together. We appreciate what he's done. He's had a very great career, including being a presidential candidate, as you all know. And I just want to say right now how much I thank Herman for being courageous and actually stepping in front of fire to try to help other people, because a presidential campaign is like a battlefield. And it takes a lot of courage to run, to expose yourself to that kind of scrutiny. I don't know that I know I would not do it, and I'm sure a lot of people here wouldn't either. I'll tell you a little bit about Herman's background in business. He started out as a computer systems analyst for Coca-Cola. He really picked good companies, and they picked a good person. From Coca-Cola, he moved to Pillsbury, where he became the regional vice president for Pillsbury of their Burger King franchise. He was able to take the 450 restaurants in his region and make them the best producing restaurants in the country. From there, he decided to take a real step out into space and take over a failing pizza chain called Godfather's. And he took that chain from bankruptcy into being a very popular and successful business. I first heard of Herman Cain, I think back in maybe the 80s or 90s. There was a commission to study the tax structure in America called the Kemp Commission. And Herman was a member of that commission. And I worked on staff of another member of that commission. And so I kept hearing what a fabulous guy Herman Cain was. And since then, of course, I saw him on TV, and I met with him a year or so ago when he decided he might want to run for president. And I helped him out as much as I could. I was really proud. He is my neighbor. We live in the same neighborhood. I like to call it Herman's Plantation, but it's really called Eagles Landing Country Club. I'm proud to know this man. I'm proud that this man exists in America today. He is bringing common sense and new ideas back into the arena. We all have a book called 999, and we all should read it and try to enact it. Is Herman here? Where's Herman? Oh, he is? Okay. Okay. With no further ado, I'd like to welcome my friend and neighbor and a great, great American, Herman Cain.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You're very American. Thanks. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Gary, for that introduction. Gary doesn't talk that much in the neighborhood. You all have gotten more out of him in this one meeting than we get out of him in the whole neighborhood over the course of a year, but I'm delighted to be here. Thanks again for that warm welcome. And I want to thank all of the people at NFIB for this invitation. And the person that he was referring to on the Kemp Commission was someone that many of you might know, a fellow by the name of Jack Ferris. Jack Ferris and I fought the good fight in Washington, D.C. together when I was head of the National Restaurant Association. That's when Jack and I first met. We also worked together on the Kemp Commission. Jack's a great guy. He's still a good friend today. And that's how far back my relationship with NFIB goes. Because I've always been a friend of NFIB, because businesses have always been my friend. Unfortunately, we do not have people in Washington, D.C. who understand you. They don't understand your business. and they don't understand me. And when I often get asked, like I was when I came in, well, how are you enjoying the radio show? I said, I'm loving it. They said, what is it that you love the most? Every day I get to irritate liberals for 3 hours on the radio. And I get liberals who will call in and admit that they listen to me, which is a good thing, because that means that some of them might be savable. We're not going to save them all, y'all. You've heard me say that, but some of them we might be able to save, but we're not going to save them all. I am going to take questions after I make a few opening remarks, because I would rather talk about what's on your mind, questions you might have, rather than just what I could stand up here and pontificate for the next 4 hours. Well, at least 3. Remember, I do that for a living. But I don't want to do that. I want to answer your questions about what is on your mind. Now, one of the reasons that I accepted this invitation, in addition to being a friend of NFIB going back to the early 1990s, is because I believe that you and I hold the key collectively to get this nation back on track. And I'm working on ways to do that. I didn't make it to the White House, but I made it to the microphone. And you can do a lot if you have people that are willing to listen and willing to work. Probably the best way to describe what my personal mission is today, in terms of trying to help take back our government. Oh yeah, I use that terminology, take back our government, because our government has been hijacked by the liberals, hijacked by people who do not understand the free market system, and hijacked by people who want to turn this country into something other than what the founding fathers had in mind. And the best description that I heard most recently, that I had not heard this analogy before, came from Dr. Ben Carson. Some of you all saw that great speech that he gave at the National Prayer Breakfast. It was absolutely riveting. And if you have not seen it, you can see it posted on HermanCainTV.com, CAINTV.com. It is worth watching the entire thing. He basically set the national media back on its heels. They're still talking about that speech that he gave. Now, because he didn't get personal relative to President Obama, he never mentioned President Obama by name. He never said Republican. He never said Democrat. He never said liberal. He never said conservative. He simply spoke facts. And liberals can't handle the facts, as you very well know. And then the liberal press came after him for bringing up issues such as national debt. They said, well, that probably wasn't the right forum for him to be bringing that up. Bringing up things like fairness, according to the Bible. The liberals said, well, that probably wasn't the right forum to bring that up. It was a prayer breakfast. I think maybe talking about something from the Bible might have been a good idea. But you see, liberals do not want you to criticize them. They want to silence you. They want to intimidate you. They want to silence me and intimidate me. Does it look like they have intimidated me into silence at this point? Not going to happen. But here's how Dr. Carson described what happens in Washington, D.C. Our national symbol is the bald eagle. It has a left wing and it has a right wing. And the thing that keeps that bald eagle flying, this is the part that I added, is the body in the middle. We are that body, called we the people. Because if we don't do our job as the people and hold our feet to the fire, the eagle will be trying to fly with one wing, and if a bird flies with one wing, they fly in a circle. And that's what we have today. We have to be that body to insist on solutions to problems and insist that our elected representatives do their jobs. Some organizations have tried to do that with various degrees of success. I commend those organizations. This is one organization, Restaurant Association, a lot of organizations. But what we do not have is a massive people's movement to hold their feet to the fire more often and with more fire. That's what I'm about. I did a piece on the radio earlier this week or last week. I lose count now that I have a regular job every day. Called The ABCs of Prosperity. You understand that. The ABCs of prosperity, many people in this administration and many people in Washington, D.C., they do not understand this. Which is why you and I have the challenges that we have in just trying to run our businesses. I just happen to note the bookmark that they had up front. And it says, NFIB, our mission, to promote and protect the right of our members to own, operate, and grow their businesses. That's the operative word. That's all you want to do. Who would get up every day and go to their business or go to their office with a strategic plan of stay the same? Nobody. That's not the way we think here in this country. That's not the way the business community thinks. I've never seen a strategic plan. On all of the boards that I've served on throughout my career, I've never gone to a strategic planning meeting where the presenter starts out with, our overall mission for the next 5 years is to not grow. You want to be able to grow. But you can't grow if you have a government working against you. I outlined the components of the ABCs of prosperity. 4, education. Education. By the way, this segment is posted on canetv.com. You can listen to the audio when you have time. I know you all are busy growing your business. The first one is education. You hear this all the time. You hear a lot of people pay lip service to it. But then you don't have a lot of people doing the things that we need to do in order to make sure that education continues to be one of the pillars of this great country. And what has to happen is government's role should be to remove barriers to education. That's why in some states, like here in Georgia, they passed recently a charter school legislation. But there are times when people who have ulterior political, ideological motives will work against things that are working. Many of you might remember back in 2004 when George Bush was president, they authorized a DC scholarship program for inner city schools, where they allowed students to apply for a $7,500 scholarship to go to the school of their choice outside the inner city. Many of the students went to charter schools outside of the city. Many of them went to private schools outside of the city. The current graduation rate in Washington, D.C. school system is about 49%. After 5 years, the kids who were able to go to a charter school or a private school, their graduation rate was 91%. And then when President Obama came in with his administration and the 5-year time frame was up, because of pressure from the unions, pressure from the teachers union, they canceled the program. Because they don't care about the kids. Many of them care about their political agenda. And that's why our job and the job of the people that we send to Washington, D.C. has to be about removing barriers to education. And it starts with dramatically reducing the role of the federal education involvement in what goes on in our schools at the local level. In fact, you can just eliminate the Department of Education. We wouldn't miss a beat. So the first component of this ABCs of education. And the more that we emphasize and promote and push getting government out of the way, better off we're going to be in terms of the road to prosperity. I'm asked often by some, how do we attract more blacks to the Republican Party? How do we attract more Hispanics, Asians? Unfortunately, some of the leaders in the Republican Party, they think that the way to do that is to become Democrat-light. That is not the way to do it. People who come to this country, people who are born in this country, no matter whether they are black, white, green, red, purple, whatever the color, they all want the same thing: an opportunity to succeed and achieve prosperity on their terms. That's what everybody wants. So if you're talking about removing barriers to education, you've got their attention. And you don't have to panic. Second component, a job. Once again, we heard lip service about creating jobs in this country. The fact of the matter is, you cannot create jobs by continuing to spend at the levels that the government is spending. It's creating jobs, but it's creating government jobs. It's not giving you an opportunity to create jobs. Coincidentally, this morning on the radio show, my researcher had found a study that was just released by NFIB that said that in 2012, 80% of NFIB members did not add any jobs. Why? Because of the uncertainty in this economy and all of the other challenges. It wasn't just the uncertainty about who was going to be president. It had a lot to do with the general uncertainty about running a business. Running a business. 80%. And see, this is consistent with when I was doing a truth tour back in September and October prior to the election. I talked directly with 2,500 business people in some of the key states in this country in terms of the election. And they all echoed what you said. I would ask the question, how many of you all have jobs in your business you could expand, but you won't because of the uncertainty that we're facing right now? Nearly every hand would go up. And you're faced with the same thing. But unfortunately, the people in Washington, D.C. do not understand how to create jobs. The way to create jobs is for government to get out of the way and to do the biggest, boldest thing that we can do to allow the economic growth that's pent up in this nation to burst open, and that is to replace the tax code. I'm not going to stop talking about it just because I'm not running for president. We've got to replace the tax code. If you have a politician talk to you about they believe in major tax reform in order to try to get your support, run. That's code for status quo. You cannot reform a tax code that has nearly 80,000 pages. When I was on the Cube Commission, I used to ask the business people when we would travel around, I said, does anybody in here know anybody that's ever read all of the pages of the tax code? No. Nobody's ever read it, not even the IRS. They've got different departments responsible for the first 10 pages, the next 10 pages, the next 10 pages, the next 10 pages. And we spend billions of dollars every year trying to make sure we stay out of jail for a code that is incomprehensible. They can talk about a lot of other things in terms of creating jobs, but the biggest thing that can be done is to replace the tax code. That's how jobs will be created. That's what people want. You've got jobs in your businesses if we could get government out of the way. And no, I'm not going to stop pushing that idea. It's part of what I'm about. So first, removing the barriers to education. Secondly, removing the barriers to job creation. Current administration doesn't get it. Thirdly, removing the barriers to a career. You know, the key to people having a successful career is for a company to be around long enough to give people careers. It gets back to getting government out of your way, getting government out of businesses' way, so people can pursue a career. Oh, it's unusual nowadays for somebody to work for a company 35 years and get that gold watch and retire. That's very unusual, but why not give people that opportunity? Why not give them that chance? By making it possible for businesses to survive and thrive long term, rather than just try and survive year in and year out. That's not what business is supposed to be about. When I first graduated from Morehouse College, right here in Atlanta, with my degree in mathematics and physics, I went to work for the Department of the Navy in Virginia. And I thought I was going to be there for 30 or 35 years. Not. After I was there for about 6 years, I said, it's time for me to move on. Because I did not want to retire on the job. I had other aspirations. And I didn't know where my career was, or how it was going to unfold. I never dreamed that I would be an executive with Burger King Corporation. Because when I was working for Pillsbury and I was an executive at Pillsbury, I thought that was going to be my last good job. Vice president of the Pillsbury Company, living in Minneapolis with indoor parking. I had a ride. I thought that was the best job. My mother used to say, you got a good job. I said, well, what's a good job, Mom? She used to say when I was going to school, I want you to finish college so you can get a good job. I said, well, Mom, what is a good job? I finally asked her one day. It's where you work inside in air conditioning and you wear a tie to work every day. I had a good job. Vice president of the Pillsbury Company. But I wasn't satisfied with just having a good job. I never dreamed that I would eventually become an executive with Burger King. I never dreamed that I would ever become president of Godfather's Pizza. I never dreamed that I would be asked to become the president and CEO of the National Restaurant Association. I never dreamed that I would run for president of the United States. I had a temporary moment of insanity, but I'm over that now. I don't regret for 1 minute doing it. And Gary mentioned something about how hard it is to make the decision to run for any public office, especially president. It's even harder to decide when to stop I made a decision to put family first. That was the driving decision behind me dropping out of the race. I appreciate all of the support that I got. I got a lot of support from a lot of people. We ran a very successful race, but I did not realize the depth of dirt to which politicians would go to try and stop you. And when it starts harming your family, you got to make a different decision, and I did. Education, we got to remove the barriers. Job creation, we got to remove the barriers. Careers, remove the barriers for businesses to thrive long term. And then fourthly, I'm waiting on her because she's writing them down. She'll give you a copy of her notes. It's on the website, CainTV.com. No, I don't mind. I'm just messing with you. Fourthly, ownership. Not everybody wants to own a business, but most people want to own a home. They want to own their own property. They want to own their own money. Ownership. There was a study that I saw last week that said that retirees are delaying their retirement because of economic conditions. Because the value of the dollars they were saving in that 401k plan all these years has gone down. You want to know one of the reasons why your retirement dollars won't go as far as they used to? It's called the Federal Reserve. You know, all of these QE1, QE2, QE3 programs that you've heard about, where they just inflate the money supply. Every time they put another $85 billion out into the currency market, by buying debt from our treasury, the value of your dollar goes down a little bit more. That's why people are delaying their retirement. But people want to own their property. I did a segment earlier this week, I think it might have been Monday, talking about the new slavery in America. Oh, I had some people call me up, they didn't like that. Why are you comparing this economy with slavery? Because they're trying to enslave us.
I did that.
That's why. It's true. Lady calls today, the only reason you're comparing slavery is because Obama's a black man. Her name is Joanne. I said, Joanne, let me tell you what I said first, and then I'll tell you where I got the information from. I talked about the fact that with the old slavery, early in the history of this country, which is a black eye on us, another man was owned as property. Today in the new slavery, the government is trying to own our property, our income, our savings. And under the old slavery, it took 32 years from independence in 1776 for this nation to rise above the concept of enslaving another human being and pass the 13th Amendment. 32 years, we were able to eliminate slavery in this country. It speaks volumes about the conscience and the morality of what the founding fathers envisioned. And I said, under the new slavery, the tax code has been around for 100 years. You do the math. If we could eliminate slavery of another man in 32 years, if we had the will to do so, we could eliminate the slavery and the bondage that we are all under this current tax code. Ownership. Ownership. And so when the lady called up to give me a piece of her mind about using the word slavery in this context, I said, lady, let me explain something to you. It has nothing to do with President Obama's color. You see, I wrote another book called They Think You Are Stupid 7 years ago. Obama wasn't president. And in that book, I wrote a section called Economic Slavery. You see, there are a lot of people who want to see everything as some sort of racial or color attack. And my boss, my program director, points out to me all the time, you don't have to worry about that crap. I've been called racist. I've been called Uncle Tom. I've been called a lot of names. But I don't let name calling bother me, folks. Because just like you, my mission is to make sure that my children and my grandchildren will have similar opportunities that you and I have had in order to be able to achieve our definition of prosperity in this country. So we know that in Washington, D.C., with the political class, we've got the left wing and the right wing. We've got to be the body to provide the heat. So when they feel the heat, they will see the light. And that's why I've started an online activist group called HITM. Hit 'em. HITM. Guess where you can find it? CainTV.com. HITM stands for Hermanators Intelligent Thinkers Movement, because ignorant people are running America. We've got to fight it with intelligence. An online activist organization. I invite all of you to take a look at it and join. Doesn't cost you any money. We just need to know how to contact you, so we can let you know at those critical times when you need to contact your representatives or your senators. It's as simple as that. But that's how we're going to pull these two wings together. And one of the frustrating things that a lot of people call into the show about is they're frustrated because they understand the challenges we face. They understand just how messed up things are, but they're frustrated about, well, what can we do about it? And that's when I remind them of one of my favorite poems. It comes from the movie Pokemon. Life can be a challenge. Life can seem impossible. It's never easy when there's so much on the line. But you can make a difference. There's a mission just for you. Just look inside and you will find just what you can do. Let's focus on what we can do, folks. This is not a sprint to take back our government. It's a marathon. And I invite you to join us at HITM. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll take a few questions. They haven't given me time for that. See, those people getting ready to go create some jobs. I'm ready to go.
I'm not afraid.
They got a mic, or you can yell it out after him, okay? She can talk loud enough. I know her. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Cain. I appreciate you being here today. Whenever I get a chance to speak with a guy like you, I always like to kind of propose a question. And since you're a big ideal guy, we didn't have a federal income tax before 1913, and in 100 years we've gone from 0 to, over 50% for the average American. And my concept is to put forth a way to constitutionally limit the amount a citizen can be taxed by percentage of their income. Because currently there absolutely is no ultimate limit to the burden we bear and what the government can take from us. And until there is one, I don't know when it will ever stop.
This is why I proposed the 999 plan. Because it would do several things, but the biggest thing that it would do is it would be visible and simple, and if a politician proposed to us raising the 999 to 12, 12, 12, like some people said, we would know about it. The problem with the current tax code is we get hit with sneaker taxes, little by little by little. Let me give you an example. I work for Cox Radio / WSB, and I just happened to look at my pay stub. How many people in here can remember when your pay stub or the pay stub that you issued to people using a payroll service used to say Social Security and Medicare? How many of y'all remember that? Right. Then one day you wake up and it doesn't say Social Security and Medicare. It says FICA. Who the hell is FICA? When my son turned 16, he was working in one of my godfather's pizza restaurants. And when he got his first real check, you know, not dad giving him money for mowing the lawn and stuff like that, he called me up and said, "Dad, I got my first paycheck." I said, "Good. Welcome to the workforce, son." He said, "But Dad, I got a question." I said, "What?" "Who is this FICA guy?" "That's your new business partner." Now they've changed it again. I had to call the head of human resources and ask, "What the hell is this, Kathy?" Now, or at least on their pay stub, they have MED, which is Medicare, and OASDI. I said, "What is that?" Old age something, 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 something. That's what they called it in 1935 when they started Social Security. That's what they used to call it. So you see, there's a game going on here. Let's keep changing stuff and maybe they won't notice. You know why they broke out the Medicare? Because that 1.4% has no limit anymore. It's called a sneaker tax. As long as we've got nearly 80,000 pages, they're going to continue to sneak taxes. Let me give you another good example. In Obamacare, if you're not in the medical device business, you may not even know about this. In Obamacare, there is a medical device tax of 2.3% for anybody that makes medical devices. 2.3% medical device tax on your top line sales. So even if that company doesn't make any money, they got to pay that tax. Let me rephrase that. Who do you think is going to pay that tax?
Consumer.
The consumer. The consumer. So if you have a medical device of some sort, the cost is going to go up because businesses can't just continue to absorb taxes that are forced on them. So the short answer to your question is, we get rid of the tax code, first of all. And let me just say this. I could be happy if it's the flat tax on income, the fair tax, which is a national consumption tax, or 999. I does not care which one. Either one would be better than this mess that we have today. So that's how we address that. Then, if you have a tax structure that is visible and understandable, then we can hold our feet to the fire in terms of them wanting to tax us ad infinitum. Yes, my dear?
What do you do when you have a little town, Grafton, and Houston? What is the best thing we can do to fight against those who think we're stupid?
question is, what is the biggest thing that we can do to fight against those that think we're stupid? We must be organized in order to be able to respond on a dime. That's why I created HITR. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be members of these other organizations. Let me give you an example. Did you know that a member of Congress has introduced legislation in the House to eliminate the 2-term limit for president? Did y'all know that? Why do you think they want to eliminate the 2-term limit for president? Because all of the people that love Obama. So I had a caller the other day call up and say, well, what do you think of that? I said, NFW. Yeah. Use your imagination. Yeah, right. Use your imagination. Some of y'all ate too much, see? It's kind of cascading across the room. So first we got to be organized and being able to respond quickly to the stuff going on in Washington, D.C., because sometimes we don't hear about it until it's too late. And that's why we are creating this online activist organization. And thirdly, be knowledgeable. Find at least 1 or 2 sources that you trust to stay up with what's going on. One thing you can do is listen to a Herman Cain show. we have one of the things we emphasize. We're going to tell you the facts. We're going to tell you the truth. We've got written commentaries on there. They're not always long. They're sometimes short because there's so much stuff out there. You all don't realize, for the 3 hours I'm on the radio every day, I spend at least 3 hours reading and getting ready to do the radio show. And some of it I wish I didn't have to read and understand. But you have to understand it to be able to put it in context. So, stay involved, stay informed, and stay inspired that we can make a difference. Don't believe them when they say that we can't. Yes, sir.
Mr. Cain, thanks a lot for being here. You're great, by the way. I'm back.
Thanks, sir.
What do you, in your opinion, can we do to convince people who are enslaved, if you will, by the entitlement system that we have here in this country, to get them on board, to bring folks that are in the midst of these struggles to the right side?
Right. First, recognize a principle of mine, and that is we can only save the savable. You're not going to save everybody. You're not going to get everybody to see the light. And you'll know these people that aren't savable after you talk to them for about 2 minutes. After you talk to them about 2 minutes and say, did you know that we need to replace the tax code? And if the words out of their mouth are, it's Bush's fault, then you know you got a problem. Because they want to play the blame game. So just remind yourself that you're not going to save everybody. I had a very encouraging call just this morning from a guy who called to tell me that there are some of his friends that he plays golf with who are starting to see the light. So just be selective with people that you're trying to share with them the message that entitlement programs enslave you. They enslave you. But there are some people who will game the system because that's all they want out of life. But the good news is there are more people who have the dignity and the self-respect to want to earn it for themselves. And those are the ones that you share information with. Yes, sir.
I've got a good friend of mine, I believe you know him, Senator Josh McCoon.
Yeah.
He was on your campaign.
Yes, I know Josh.
And he is kicking around the idea, thinking about introducing maybe late this year or next year about eliminating the income tax here in the state of Georgia. And obviously going to some sort of a sales tax. Now, everybody's asking questions about what would you replace it with and what level. I wanted to get your opinion on, because everybody's talking about having subsidies for the lower income, and my answer obviously would be to have it as low as possible with absolutely no exceptions, no subsidies, no nothing, and have every lobbyist in the state go to some other state. But that's just my opinion. But I wanted, didn't know if you had thought about that here in the state of Georgia, or and what your opinion on that.
I think it's a great idea. I would pattern it after the national fair tax proposal, which, without having a bunch of exceptions, it does have in it a prebate for low-income people, which is not that difficult to implement. So I do believe that we should allow low-income individuals to get what they call a prebate. I think it's a great idea. You can do it on the state level, just like we do it on a national level. But those who want to maintain the status quo, they're going to demagogue it the same way they demagogue the fair tax, which was proposed nationally. Congressman John Linder, as you know, was one of the key sponsors of that legislation. The argument that you're going to hear is, but wait a minute, what is our current sales tax here in the state of Georgia? What is it?
6.5%.
6.5%. So you're going to tell me you want me to put another 5% on top of that? They don't understand you're replacing one thing with another. And that's how they try to demagogue. I think it's a great idea, and it would put taxation in the hands of the consumer and out of the hands of the politicians. Yes, sir. Last question.
Herman, I met you back when you were running for the Senate in the state of Georgia. You're a great man, and I appreciate everything that you do, even though you are Gary Harkin's friend. We won't hold that against you. One of the things I wanted to bring to you, Herman, is the Republican Party is just like the church. If we have somebody in the church that gets a blemish, we all are sinners in this room, saved by the grace of Jesus. But we all learn things through life, through trials and tribulations.
Yes.
What are we going to do to be able, when there are good people out there that have become good people because of trials and tribulations in their life, to get the party to acknowledge that and not be like the church? When you have a sinner sitting next to you, you want to throw them out of the church, but yet you want to go grab the sinner in the street and bring him in the church.
Yeah. That's a very, very difficult question to answer. But since I have the liberty of being perfectly honest with you, I have issues with the Republican Party. I am disappointed with the Republican Party. Not all people that work in the party, because there are a lot of good people that I know who are there trying to do the right thing. But collectively, the leadership of the Republican Party is hard-headed, as my grandparents used to say. They will not listen. The reason they got beat so bad in November is because they thought that the old model would work. And there was some of us screaming, saying it will not work, and it didn't. They got beat on the ground because they didn't have an effective ground game. I'm not mad at you. I'm just passionate about this. So those that are working actively with the party are going to have to try and get the message through that we got to look at things differently, folks. Got to look at things differently. Let me give you an example. The chairman of the RNC, Reince Priebus, he was in Atlanta last week, holding anybody here from the media? Good. Holding now get this, holding an African American listening session here in Atlanta, in Georgia. Who didn't get invited? I didn't get the memo. And when they discovered that I didn't get the memo, my phone was ringing off with people who wanted to, mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa, we're sorry, we're sorry, we're sorry. They're not listening. The biggest problem with the Republican Party is, number one, they don't know how to control the narrative, and they're not listening to the input that they're getting, not just me, but a lot of other people. So you're going to have to change it from the inside. For those of you that are active, and I encourage you to be active in whatever party you support, so you can help make it much more effective, make it more effective. But there is no short answer, there is no quick answer to changing it. And if the Republican Party does not step up its game, they're going to continue to lose, and here's why. The class warfare rhetoric is working. And this administration, the Democrats know how to play it like a film. Class warfare rhetoric, the entitlement rhetoric, and in many instances, the race card rhetoric. And this is why I have suggested we need to talk about the road to prosperity, which gets up above all of that stuff. Thank you all very much for your attention. God bless you. Thanks again.
There you have it, the Gospel by Herman Cain. Thanks again so much, Herman, for being here. We certainly appreciate it. I want to thank all the speakers today. Secretary Kemp, Senator Shafer, Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob was unfortunately not the bearer of good news, but we'll fight through and prosper. Thank you to all of you who came today. I know we're taking time out of your business and out of you doing what you love. So thank you for taking time to be here. Thank you for being a member and active with NFIB. We love fighting on your behalf. And we'll continue to do that here in Atlanta as well as Washington, D.C. If I could remind you again, we've got a satisfaction survey at our table. We certainly want to get your feedback, good or bad, so we can try to improve this event going forward.
Just one's fine, I'll do it.
Want to again thank our sponsors, AT&T, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Georgia, Humana, and TMX Finance. For any of our Leadership Council members, or anybody who is a Safe Trust owner or would like to donate to the Safe Trust, we're going to have a private reception off to the left here following the close of today's event. Thanks again for coming out. I encourage you to stay involved with NFIB. Check your inbox, check the website. We try to keep it up to date as possible. As you heard today, we've got some serious challenges on our hand, but apathy is not going to get us down the path of victory. So stay engaged, stay involved, and thanks again for all your time.